Hi, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to do a review on the Tidewe, I think that's how you pronounce it, their hunting blind as well as their hunting chair. And we've got deer season that's right around the corner. It's literally, today is Monday, and the opener for archery only tags here in California is this Saturday. So I'm going to look forward to using this thing for the first time for my hunts, but I'm going to open this thing up, check it out, and get it all set up, so that way I'm a little more familiar with how this whole thing is used. And then I'll show you a cool feature of why I picked this one and then in a little bit once I get it all set up. So let's open this thing up. All right, here is the blind coming out of the carrying case. Your first time setting this thing up is going to be kind of tricky, so you want to make sure that you're practicing like I am before you actually take the stuff out. So what it says here is they want you to lay this thing down flat until you can locate the center or where the roof would be. And so I'm looking at it right here, and I see right here, this is the roof, right? So I'm gonna grab onto this thing, and I'm gonna step on the edges here just to kind of keep it grounded. And I'm gonna pull it straight up and see what happens here. There we go. All right, so if you hear that pop, and now the roof is kind of rigid. And at this point, you can go around and start pulling the walls out, and you hear all the hubs connect to each other. And what you're looking for is these hand straps down here. You just pull straight out until you hear it pop, just like that. So there's one corner or one wall, second wall, third wall, and then the last wall, and that's it. So there's the setup of the blind, and then what they have here are loops for you to be able to anchor down the corners with some stakes. So let's take a look at that bag. You have a total of 8 stakes. You have one for each corner, and you also have one for each of the walls. And the purpose of this is in order to get these staked down as well with the guidelines running all the way out, and then it stops it from popping in when a strong gust of wind blows it. So it's a really good idea that if you're working in an area where there's a lot of wind, that you definitely want to stake these down as well. Let's break this thing down and see how quick that will happen. So the first thing you do is you make sure that the door is unzipped. So I have this thing zipped open, and then you just start pushing the walls in first until they pop and the hub goes to the other side, points towards the inside. All right, so now it lays flat, and then I just push the center down until that pops. And then from here, you take all of the corners and you fold them up together. So I'll grab the corners, fold them all up together. Just like that. And I think what I'm gonna do, a little mod or something extra that I may do, is probably just bring like a 550 cord or a nylon strap in order to wrap this thing up to keep it nice and tight, and then it makes it easier for me to shove into the bag. But I'm gonna take this thing over here, and then we will slip this right over across the top of this thing. Okay, so that's my first time ever setting it up and breaking it down. That right there is nice and packed up into its carrying case. It's got a shoulder strap as well, so it makes it easier for you to walk this thing out into the spot you want to set your blind up at. All right, so I'm gonna put that off to the side. And then now, what we have is the hunting chair that's gonna go with it. I'm gonna take it out of the package and set it up here before I walk it back out there. So right off the bat, it's already nicely packaged, so that way it's not rattling around in the box. You got styrofoam there. Okay, so what I noticed in the bag was I had these 2 screw knobs right there, so make sure you don't forget that. I'll set that off to the side. And then what's in the box still are the legs. Okay, so there is the set of legs. These are the 2 that fell out, so it wasn't supposed to come loose in the package like that. It sits right here. So pull these things out. So there's the 4. Let's set that there. So I'm going to screw these in. That next one. All right, so now it's on there loosely. So everything looks like it's seated in place and everything is properly fitting. I'm gonna go ahead and start tightening these things down now. And it's just finger tight. I'm not using any tools for this. If I press on this button right here, then it extends the legs. And it doesn't look like it has preset stops in it. So you're gonna have to just adjust that according to the ground that you're sitting on. If you're just a touch, you know, canted to one side or whatever, then you may have to extend one side more than the other in order to keep yourself fairly level. This thing will freely swivel as needed. And it's pretty quiet, which I appreciate. We won't find out until how quiet it is until I set this thing on the ground. If you take a look at it here, if you need to sit higher, then I removed the, I guess the back side of that bolt. And then what you can do is remove this, and then as you slide it up, you'll see more holes that are right there. So you're gonna set that to whatever height you want. I'm just gonna leave it at the bottom height for now. I'll mess with the height of it later and get it all aligned. And once you have it set to the right height that you want, then you can put the back of the knob back on. Finger tighten that. I'm not gonna get crazy with how tight that is. So to set this thing down over here, take a seat on this thing. Dude, that's pretty comfortable, man. So one of the things that I was concerned about, and I won't know until we get into an area that's a lot more quiet. We have cars driving around, there's a freeway nearby, so I can hear a bunch of noise and stuff like that, but I'm always kind of curious how much noise this makes if I needed to swivel around for whatever reason it is. I don't hear any like clicking or any kind of creaking. There's no squeaking noise coming from it. So far I'm pretty impressed. In order to break this thing down, it's got a shoulder strap and 2 other loops on the very back side of this thing. So you can remove the legs and then attach it to that. And then you can walk both the hunting chair and the blind over to where you need to get it set up. So we'll do that right now. If you look at its 4 knobs here, I'm gonna go ahead and unscrew these and pull them out. And then I'm gonna set them in a safe place so I don't lose them. You pull this thing off and then you can close the legs down, and then from here you have straps that you can attach it to, so that way it makes it easier for you to transport both. So I'm gonna loosen these things up. I'm gonna slide this through here and have this pretty tightened down so that way it doesn't rattle too much. Have that down nice and tight. Cool. So that right there is your one single package. And then what you do is you can take these 4 and then screw them back into the chair itself. For now, I'm just gonna stick them in my pocket just because we're not gonna walk very far. So I'm gonna take this thing with the legs facing away from my body, put that over my shoulder. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with this. Put that over my shoulder. Also, I wanna make sure that I bring my stakes with me. Okay, we're at our spot. We're gonna get this thing set up. Let's hit the timer and see how long it takes for me to set up both. So the first thing I'm gonna do is set up the blind. And I'm not in a hurry. I wanna see how long it takes for me to just casually put this thing together. So that way I can have a little bit more of a conservative time frame to see how long it takes. Okay, so once again, I'm gonna have the camouflage side up. I'm gonna find the center of this thing and pull it up until it pops. Okay, now the walls. And what I'm realizing is that it helps a lot if you want to go opposite sides instead of just working around the corners as you see them. But I popped that side first. I'm gonna go the opposite side and pop that up. And then it makes it easier. I feel like it kind of just stands up for you a little bit better. So whatever time it took for me to just set up the blind, you'll see that at the bottom of the screen. Now I'm gonna set up the chair. Got my 4 knobs there. And once again, it doesn't matter the orientation of where exactly you want this thing to be sitting. It's the first one. And so far, everything's lining up really nicely. One of the big pains in the butts of assembling things is when the holes don't line up properly from the factory, and it's, you know, you're gonna have to fight it. So I'm really happy that the quality of this thing is high enough where I don't need to struggle with that at all. Okay, so now going back to the legs, and pop that open just like that, and then I'm gonna take this thing inside. And the door is over here. All right, so yeah, I guess we'll stay up on the outside. I'm gonna go in and set it up. That's it. All right, so if I zip this whole thing up, when I drop this down just like that, I can. But this is the back side, so technically I would be facing this direction, and you want to have this black part towards the back. But one of the coolest features, as you guys are already seeing from inside here looking out here, is that you could see through all of this, right? From the outside, you can't see what's going on inside here, which is really freaking cool. So I can go ahead and sit down just like this. Be nice and comfortable. I can lean all the way back, and it doesn't make any weird creaking noises, at least not for now, because this is brand new. And I have all of this right here open for me to be able to see and have good visibility and awareness all the way around me, which is really cool. And if I need to open up one of these windows to shoot through, then all I have to do is just pull these things down, and they're really quiet too. Just like that. And slide this thing up. And of course, you just have to make sure that if you're shooting your bow, that everything is going to clear through that window. But that right there is really neat. You have the stakes that you can set down if you want to. Let's set up the stakes real quick. Now, normally I wouldn't bring the mallet out with me because it makes a lot of noise if you're setting up your blinds in an area that you want to hunt. But since we're out here and the ground is kind of hard, I may possibly need it. So let's just say I'm going to stake down 2 corners, and then I'm gonna stake down one of the walls. Yeah, the ground's pretty hard. All right, one side, second side. I'm gonna pull it nice and tight away from that other corner, and then stake that down so that way it stays opened up. Okay, so for this one here, I'm just gonna do just a basic loop, and then instead of tying it into the strap, I'm gonna put it into here. And I don't know if that's what the instructions suggest, but I would rather hang it into this thing and have a little more of a rigid place for this to go into. And I like loops because it's easier for me to untie it a little bit later on. But, so that right there will stay nice and secure, and that's not going to go anywhere. And then what I'm going to do here is just shorten this thing for now, so it's easier for me to manage and work with. So what you're gonna do here is take the stake. I'm gonna pull it fairly taut, and you wanna make sure that you do this after you staked all the corners down. And I like to take my stake and angle it at an angle away from whatever it is that I'm trying to, you know, tighten down. Because if I angle it this way, and with any kind of resistance, it'll make it too easy for it to slip out. So I'll make this a little bit more of an angle towards me or away from the blind. And I'll stake this thing in. Okay, so once that's staked in, if you need to tighten it some more, then you just come back up into this line right here, and then you just pull on it to tighten it up just a little bit. And it's already pretty snug. That right there, it's nice and tight. So that's how you keep the sides open, and then you do it all the way around the entire side. And if you need to, they do have these loops here at the very top, if you can see here, and also at the very bottom. And what you can do is you can take vegetation and then weave it, you know, over around the top of this thing, a little bit on the bottom. And you don't want to make it so dense that it renders the see-through feature from the inside useless. But it helps break up the line of this a lot better, right? And so, you know, I would probably thread, you know, some tree branches and some leaves through here, a little bit down at the bottom. I might just like lay some things down under here to kind of break up the line, to break up this 90-degree angle. But that's all I would really do with that. If I'm standing back here, then obviously it's hard for me to see any kind of silhouette if there's not a whole lot of light coming in, because the backstop behind Angus filming there behind the camera is all black. So that's a lot harder to see him than it was when I was standing off to the side where light is penetrating through, and then I see a light background right behind him. So I'm pretty impressed with this. This is really cool. All right, guys, so now that I've got it all set up, I want to make sure that I know what it feels like to shoot out of it. I already know that I'm working in a very much of a compact and confined space. That's going to change the way that I draw. I'm also in a seated position, which is something I don't honestly practice a whole lot, and that might force me to draw differently. It might make it more difficult for me to draw my bow because I'm not using the same muscles in order to stabilize myself as I'm doing the draw. And the other thing that I want to do too is I want to make sure that I have everything staged exactly where it is that I need it to be in order to give me the space, but also have my bow in range for me to reach over and grab it easily. And I want to be able to have my chair positioned in a spot where I can draw and not come back and hit my elbow on the fabric and make noise. I want to make sure that I don't do anything weird with my draw where I'm coming up and having my bow come up and hit the very top of this thing. This is aluminum, I think. And I don't want to have my bow smacking into that and making noise. So it's a really good idea to train in one of these blinds if you've never hunted from them before, because you want to make sure that you know all the things you need to consider when you're working out of these things. I also want to make sure that as I'm aiming out of this stuff is whether or not my arrow is going to clear. I have to be cognizant of whether or not my arrow is going to clear this fabric when I slide it all down. And then one last tip is when you guys are getting these things set up, you want to make sure that you clean the floor that you guys are going to be working in. I purposely left all this in there for now because I want to show you that if you've got some dry grass, and it's probably going to be hard for you guys to hear because I'm wearing a lav mic, but as I step on this stuff, these dry leaves here make noise. I've also got some branches in here that are also dry that if I step on this stuff, it's going to make a bunch of noise. So if I'm in here and I need to like move my foot and I shuffle over and grab my bow or something like that, it could potentially alert the deer, and then now it might screw up your opportunity to harvest one. All right, so what I'm gonna do right here is I'm gonna sit just like I normally would be if I'm waiting for the deer to come up. Shows up right in front of me. You should have already had all your distances of certain areas outside here of your shooting lanes ranged out, so that way you know that, you know, as it walks up to that tree, I know exactly how far that tree is. If it's at this range or at this tree right here, I already know what the range of that one is. And so it's a really good idea that you get everything ranged out all the way around you if you need to just shoot at any of them. And you may not have the time to rearrange that target. I'm going to quietly slide this down without making any whole bunch of noise. And then what I want to know is if this gap right here is going to be enough for me to be able to clear this as I shoot out of it. If it's too much space, then now I know that I can maybe run it to whatever height I want it. And I might even take like a silver Sharpie and then just mark like this is the distance that I need in order to be able to clear it. So that way I'm not shooting my arrow right into my material right here. Okay. So right now I've got my chair at the very back corner here. I don't know if that's going to be the ideal place yet, but I'll find out as I start shooting a few of these shots. And of course, one last thing, something I forgot to mention was you want to make sure that your bow is already knocked up with an arrow. So that way all you have to do is just pick it up and draw it. Okay, so let's see how this feels drawing inside of a confined space while seated. Okay, feels okay. It's definitely harder to draw from the seated position, and I'm looking at everything before I even get ready to pull the trigger on this thing, and I know that everything's clear. I'm gonna go for the lower right target. Because it's also dark. There's two things that I'm seeing with my sight is that my sight picture is a little different, and I don't know if it's because I've got uneven light, like I've got more light coming from my left side, and so it gives me shadows on my peep sight, and it's forcing me to send that shot to the right. And that, to me, it felt like a really good solid shot because I was pulling through on it. The other thing I also have a hard time seeing is my bubble level. So at closer ranges, that might not necessarily be a huge deal, but not being able to see your bubble, especially if you're shooting at potentially something that's at maybe a little uphill or downhill or at further distances, having your bow canted to one side or another is going to affect where your shots are going to impact. So I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to my peep. Okay, I think that shot was a little bit better, but I'm still grouping to the right just a little bit. So I think that has something to do with the lighting that's inside of here. I mean, at 20 yards, I'm off of the center by, I don't know, maybe 3 inches or something like that, 2 to 3 inches. That's not good enough for me. So let me do this again. Okay. All right, let's go check my groups. So I can already see 2 of my arrows are to the right there. And your peep definitely looks a lot different. Your sight picture looks a lot different when you're shooting in areas where it's a lot darker, and it may be potentially harder for you to see where that peep is aligned properly on your sight. So my very first shot was right here. I think my second shot was here. And then I started kind of compensating and holding on the left side with that last shot, and I got it, you know, kind of in the center there. Usually from the standing, my groups are, for the most part, like at 20 yards inside the white. I might have one that's like maybe just a little far on the edge or whatever. And it's not common for me to have a shot that far off to the right unless I did something really weird and my shot broke when it wasn't supposed to. So I already know that my marksmanship is already affected by just sitting down and drawing my bow and then having to shoot from there. And on top of that, it is darker inside the blind. So that's gonna affect the way that the peep looks to me as I'm getting it all lined up. Let's do another round. And then see if I can get that a little bit more center. But man, that's a different experience shooting from the seated position inside of this confined space. So now I already know that one of the things you can possibly consider as far as your setup is smaller is better when you're shooting from a confined space. So you don't want a gigantic long stabilizer if you shoot with stabilizers. And if you can get a shorter axle to axle bow, that might be a little bit harsher on the draw cycle, but you're working with something that's smaller and more compact, so you don't have to worry about the top of your cam hitting something in the very top of this blind. The chair is as low as I can possibly get it right now, but I think I could probably slide this now on this next round. I'm gonna slide this a little bit higher. And then I could bring this one up a little bit more, because I think I should be able to clear that right there. So once I get back inside, I'll take note of it. And then if I need to, I've got my silver Sharpie. I'll just mark it on the inside so that way I know how much space I need and where exactly I need these little slider clips to move. All right, let's do it again. So I think what I want to do is, I don't like that I'm this far back because I'm trying to give myself more space here, but I don't really need it. I'm going to move it a little more towards the center. So I guess what I'm looking at is if I divide this space inside here into 3 sections, then I want my body, my spine to align to that 3rd section. And I think that'll give me enough space in order to be able to draw back and still stay fairly centered in the middle of this thing and have room to shoot. And then if I need to, you know, move this way or even shoot through this gap right here, I can. I'm already noticing the difference because when I had it, both the top and the bottom mesh opened up equally, I felt like after I drew, I had to kind of sink down in order to be able to see what I'm shooting at. So I think the better way to go about it is to slide the top mesh higher and then keep the bottom one almost kind of level, or like right in the middle of my gap. Let's do this again. We got plenty of space back here. Ooh. Okay, so that's a little bit better. It looks like I'm still hitting right. Yeah, I definitely need to slide that top one higher. All right, let's do this. So I'm gonna make the adjustment right now. So I already know I need to move this probably as high as it possibly could. Then I'm gonna slide this bottom one up a little bit more. So that right there is just a little under halfway on each side of that. So I think that's gonna give me more clearance. Yeah, that's already better. Okay, cool. All right, let's shoot this last arrow. The other thing I'm also doing is I'm also trying to draw back a little slower and smoother. So that way I don't have all that noise that's coming from my arrow dragging across my rest. Even though it's fairly quiet, if I pull this thing back quickly, then it does make more noise than when I'm pulling it back slowly. So there's one of those other things that you have to pay attention to as well. All right, let's look at my groups. So you can see here the groups are fairly tight, but I'm still grouping to the right. So there's definitely something weird going on with the way that my peep looks on the inside of that thing, which is really annoying. I'm gonna get some more practice in. I really enjoyed trying this thing out. It's my first time ever shooting from a blind, my first time owning a blind, and I'm hoping to punch my tag this year for deer. So if you guys like the video, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and also hit the notification bell, so that way you can stay updated on all the new videos that are coming out. If you guys are interested in buying this thing, I'll have the link down below as well. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one.